Hi, I'm Noam Wasserman, Dean of the SciSim School of Business at Yeshiva University. I was a longtime professor at Harvard Business School, an entrepreneur, and a venture capitalist. I wrote the bestseller, The Founder's Dilemmas.
And I'm Charlie Harary. I've been working with companies for over 10 years. And that book, The Founder's Dilemmas, and the challenges faced by the 10,000 founders in it is the basis of this podcast. We are delving into the issues faced by startups to help you avoid the pitfalls that claim so many good companies.
Let's get started.
Welcome, everybody, to the Founders Dilemma podcast. It is great to be with you again, and welcome to our Season 3. For those who haven't yet, please check out Season 1 and 2. And what we've been doing in the past few seasons is meeting with incredible people. And tonight is a show that you do not want to miss. As always, Dean, what do we have for us today?
So thank you, Charlie. Great to be back with you. Tonight we are opening the season with a rock star. An adulterated rock star across both the entrepreneurship landscape and within Startup Nation. We have Uri Levine. Thank you, Uri, for joining us tonight. Let me give you a little bit of some of the background, but you'll hear a lot more of his background that will hopefully emerge from the dialogue that we're going to have. First off, the big one that Uri is very much known for is co-founder of Waze, something that is a, if not daily, possibly hourly thing in a lot of our lives in terms of being able to both metaphorically and physically get us to the destinations that we are meant to be able to get to. The Waze acquisition caused major ripples in the world back when it was happening in 2013. At the time, it was the largest ever acquisition of an app maker, and it also signaled that a startup could outcompete the biggies. They were competing against the 800-pound gorillas in the industry at that point. But that is not where it ended for Uri. Uri has now doubled down, and doubled down. He is a serial entrepreneur who has gone through multiple ventures, and including a very prominent one that was MoveIt, that also sold. So we'll get into a little bit the terms of the Waze acquisition, more than $1 billion. MoveIt also sold for more than $1 billion when it was sold to Intel in 2020. And so out of the 50 unicorns that have come out of Israel, out of Startup Nation, Uri is responsible for 2 out of the 50. I'm pretty sure that there are more than 24 other entrepreneurs in Startup Nation, and so Uri is punching way above his weight in terms of producing 1/25th of all of the unicorns within Startup Nation. Just to give you, I'm going to sprinkle in, Uri has a wonderful book that Charlie and I have very much enjoyed that we'll talk a bunch about, Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Solution. I will sprinkle in throughout what we're talking about today some excerpts from the book that resonated with me, and we'll use it to set the table for some of the questions. Just a couple of things to be able to give you a feel for Uri. A quote first: "I consider myself an optimist. As an avid skier, people often ask me what my best ski vacation was. My answer is simple: the next one." Next one is, "Perhaps my most important personality trait is that of an entrepreneur, but the second one, pretty close to the first one, is that of a teacher." I think you can guess why this is resonating with me. "I enjoy teaching and therefore mentoring. That combination is pretty unique." I definitely agree. So thank you for bringing the teaching in addition to the experiences. A lot of times you can learn a lot when you grab a book. We have copies for everyone here. You can learn a lot from looking at the table of contents of the book. Rather than an epilogue, you'll see in there that there's a happy log that Uri ends the book with. He has the acknowledgments at the end, not at the beginning. That's something in my books I was very particular about also. As the reader is getting into the book, not throwing them off course by having suddenly a self-serving set of acknowledgments that you're throwing in there. Get right into the part of it that you want to be able to convey to them, and then at the end, being able to have that. So we're on the same page with that. And then the final one about our being on the same page. Not sure we're going to have time to be able to get into this, but Chapter 6, the title of it is Firing and Hiring. Seems backwards. Within my Founders Dilemmas course that we have here at YU, that is actually the same exact sequence that we go through in terms of being able to cover those two topics. First the firing and then the hiring. And so very interesting to see some of the other alignment that we have with that. And then alignment with the podcast and the theme that we have. The foreword is by Steve Wozniak, an iconic founder, the co-founder of Apple. And in it, Woz says, "Uri uses metaphors of human life," which is something we very much try to do on the podcast, be able to relate entrepreneurial mindset to all sorts of walks of life, personal stuff. And also, he talks about that Uri is going to be dealing with personal relationships in ways that we have all experienced. entrepreneurial mindset and the application to our personal lives and things like that. And hopefully we'll have a question a little bit later that's going to build on that. So with that, Uri, again, welcome. Let me get into the idea, which is a core part of the book, how the idea for Waze came to you. Let's back up to Rosh Hashanah 2006. And if you can walk us through what was the spark for the idea and any things that we might be able to learn from how you were sparked by this idea that might be applied elsewhere.
So thank you, and you're right. I actually have these two strong personalities of being an entrepreneur and a teacher. So I will feel equally rewarded if I build stuff myself or I guide someone to build it. And writing the book was actually fulfilling my destiny as a teacher. And building startups is fulfilling my destiny as an entrepreneur. Going back to Rosh Hashanah 2006, we were actually on a family vacation up in Metula, the northern part of Israel. And back then, when you want to go back to Tel Aviv, then there are actually only two routes that you can choose, Wadi Ara or Wadi Milek. And back then, there was always traffic jams, right? And we were like 10 cars there. And we had 4 little kids at the time. By the time we left, we were the last one to leave. I started to call up the rest of the cars, asking them what is traffic like on their path. And I realized that one of the routes is actually very busy, while the other one is way less. And that was the eureka moment for me, the realization that really what I need is someone ahead of me on the road to tell me what's going on. And it was later that I tried through multiple approach to actually start that, and it was only in 2007 that I met the other two co-founders. That was really the triggering and the decision that this is what we're going to do.
Take us through a little bit the delay, meaning you have an idea, it's a eureka moment. A lot of people have ideas when this is wrong, that's wrong, I wish it was like this, I wish it was like that. And there's a delay between I have this eureka moment and I can actually do something about it. What happens in between when you have that idea before you find people to work with, before this thing actually becomes real?
So this is what happened. You fall in love with the problem. And when you are in love, then you are willing to actually make the leap of faith. You are ready to sacrifice. You are ready to go into this journey because you realize that this journey is not going to be simple, right? So building a startup is complex, is hard. I usually define that in 3 dimensions. It's a long roller coaster journey of failures, right? And let me deal with each one of them separately. Roller coasters with ups and downs, but all the businesses in the world have ups and downs. The frequency of those when you're building a startups are actually way more. I think that I heard the best quote from Ben Horowitz from Andreessen Horowitz venture capital firm. And before that, he used to be a CEO of a startup, and he was asked whether or not he was sleeping well at night as a CEO of a startup. And he said, oh yeah, I slept like a baby. I woke up every 2 hours and cried. And that's really the reality of the roller coaster journey. There are days that you are going home crying. There are days that you are basically saying, why in heaven did I went into this? Did I go into this journey? And the realization is that because the mission is right, because the problem is worth solving. And the team that you have built around you is the one that you are actually committed your journey to them, and they commit their journey to you. And so this is the roller coaster part of it. The journey of failures, look, we're trying to build something new that no one did before. And so we think we know exactly what we are doing, but the reality is that we don't, so we try. We try something with the conviction that it's going to work, and it's not, so we're trying something else and it's not, and we keep on trying different things until we find something that does work. And so this journey of failures actually creates 2 immediate conclusions. The first one is that if you're afraid to fail, in reality you already failed because you're not going to try. Albert Einstein used to say that if you haven't failed, that's because you haven't tried anything new before. If you will be trying new things, you will fail. And hopefully in Yeshiva University, we are teaching the students to fail, because usually we don't, right? Usually we expect them to be perfect, and we don't and they're afraid to fail. And so we need to teach people to fail. Very, very important. The other part is that once you realize that this is going to be a journey of failures, then you want to fail fast. The faster that you fail, you actually have enough time to make another attempt. Try another version, try another approach, try a different approach, try something else. And so the more attempts that you actually have, you increase the likelihood of being successful. And the last element, which is the most challenging part, it's a long journey. It's a very, very long journey. And in particular, the longest part of the journey is that nothing happens. It's like crossing a desert, right? There is only sand around you. You walk all day and there is still only sand around you. And you go to sleep at night and you wake up in the morning and there is still only sand around you. And until you get to the area, to the point of the journey that you actually create value, it's very long.
Yeah, so let me pick up on several of the things that you teed up. First, in terms of never done it before, you talk in the book about the naysayers, about the people who are not going to be ratifying your idea and that it's going to be an overwhelming bunch of naysayers out there. How can you balance being makabel their feedback, accepting their feedback, and being able to think twice about what you're doing versus driving forward with an idea? This is one of the places that I really liked how you tapped into some of the personal side, just to read a couple of the excerpts from it. Quote unquote, "This is the stupidest idea I've ever heard." I've heard that many times. I think that people don't say that to me so much anymore, but in the beginning, they used to say it a lot. Sometimes you take your date to meet your friends for the first time, and they say, that person is not for you, and should I be listening to them? And then some of the other things that you have, like soon after that, talk about what we within the podcast have referred to as the perils of passion. The good news is that you are in love and you don't listen to them. The bad news is that you're in love and you don't listen to them. And so the two sides of that. If you can talk about a little bit about accepting the feedback, but being able to drive forward with the things that you're doing.
So this is something that is really interesting, right? So you go into this journey, and between 2006 and 2007, we actually started the journey with the other two co-founders, and 2008 that we get funded and started the company. There are a lot of things that happens, most of them in your head. Right, so you speak with people and they tell you, yeah, this is a problem worth solving, and so you realize that they actually sent you on the mission to solve that for them. And you speak with industry experts and they tell you, okay, this one doesn't work and this one doesn't work and this one we have tried and maybe it can work in certain conditions and so forth. And you ended up with accumulating a lot of information and knowledge about what you are about to do. Now, this process of incubating the idea leads into when you meet other people and they haven't had the chance to incubate the idea, right? So you drop on them a bomb out of the blue and you tell them, this is what I'm gonna do, right? And people are afraid of changes. People don't like changes. People like the stability and that general approach is don't rock the boat, right? And so what happened is that you are basically coming to them with a change and they're saying this will never work, right? And these are the nice guys. The lesser nicer guys, they will tell you this is the stupidest idea that they ever heard. And then what happened is that you realize that, okay, wait a minute, I need to go piece by piece and try first of all to understand if they are subscribed to the problem, right? And traffic jams is a big problem and everyone hates traffic jams, right? So that part is easier. And then you learn how to tell the story in a way that that is way more compelling and way more appealing. But still, at the end of the day, there are so many people that are going to tell you, no, this will never work. And when you go fundraising, then there will be 100 times no that you're going to hear. And if the mission is right and the team is right, you will never give up.
One of the challenges or one of the opportunities of a startup, what always amazes me, is that startup founders seem to know, maybe they don't know, but it seems at the end to know how to have co-founders, board members, investors. The idea needs an entire tribe around it to make it real. And even though maybe the founder gets a certain amount of, I thought of it, and we think you go from I thought of it to now it happens, but you know that there's a lot of people in between. Do you have any guidance for how do you put people around you? If you're a college student and you have an idea, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business person, and you want to start something, you want to grow something, How do you know who to add to your team, who to bring on as investor? Is there a guidance that you followed to picking the people around you at every level?
So, in general, yes, but this doesn't work, right? So the generalization here is at the end of the day is going to be very specific, right? And so for a second, I would say you want to go into this journey with people that you trust, because the journey is hard. And you don't want to be left alone when it's becoming really hard, right? And so you're looking for people that can commit to the journey, that realize that it's going to be hard, that you trust them, that they will not give up, because at the end of the day, if the problem is worth solving and the team is not going to give up, very likely that it will be successful. The challenge is not to give up, right? The challenge is not to give up when nothing works. And so this is one part. The other part is that we are going to make a lot of mistakes, right? And you mentioned earlier firing and hiring, right? Now, the reason that this chapter is coming from a perspective that I've developed over the years, and I spoke with many entrepreneurs that their startup failed, and asked them why, what happened? And about half said the team was not right. And I kept on asking, okay, what do you mean the team was not right, right? And so they told me we had this guy not good enough, and this guy, so not good enough was the main reason that I heard. Another reason that I heard quite often was we had communication issues. Something that I actually called ego management issues. And then asked them the most interesting question: when did you know that the team is not right? All of them knew within the first month. Within the first month, they knew that the team is not right. And then you said, wait a minute, if you knew within the first month that the team is not right, and you didn't do anything, the problem was not that the team was not right. The problem was that the CEO did not make hard decisions. Making hard decisions is hard. Making easy decisions is easy. This is why in small organizations like startup, the hard decisions will go all the way to the top. Now, if the CEO is unable to make that hard decision, that is actually going to be the beginning of the end, because the result is that the top performing people would leave. Now, if you have an organization that keeps the people that shouldn't be there and the top performing people are leaving, this is the beginning of the end. So we mentioned not giving up, the grit or the perseverance as the most important behavior of a CEO of a startup. The second one is making decision with conviction. If you don't make a decision with conviction, and for a second I would say they're right decisions or no decisions, because when you make a decision, you don't know what it would be like if you will choose a different path, right? So by definition, this decision is the right one. Now, if you will figure out that you are actually going in the wrong directions and you are banging your head against the wall, then make a new decision and make it with conviction again. And if you are doing that, the team will follow. Where the team will not follow is when you don't make decisions.
And so following up on the failure part of what you were talking about before, fail fast, etc. Great subheading that you have in one of the chapters of the book that talks about not personalizing the failure when you hit it. Failure is an event, not a person. And so very much thinking about it, it's outside of you. You can do things that are going to be beyond that failure if you can recover from it. And the key thing is that it's much easier stated than done. Like naturally as humans, we recoil from failure. We don't seek it in the same way that this saying in some ways asks for it. Were you good at doing it first? How would you tell someone who's not good at doing it about how to build that resilience, how to be able to build the ability to get right back up after failure and be able to find ways that they're going to be able to get stronger from it?
So in my parents' house where I grew up, if I would come to my dad with a crazy idea, he would know that it's not going to work. And still he would say, why don't you give it a try? And so the first part was to actually send me to experiment. The second part, which was equally important, is that there was no judgment after that. Even though that he knew that it's going to fail, there was no judgment. Because what you learn, and this is where it's becoming dramatically more important, is that you learn not to fail. You learn to get up. And when you get up, you realize that, wait a minute, that failure is not a big deal. And next time, I can actually try something even more dramatic because I know how to get up. And so today, during Adi went to one of the bookstores near Bryant Park, and that is a Japanese bookstore, I think. And the book was there, which is really exciting to see the book in different bookstores. But there was a sign there, an old Japanese saying, fail 7 times and get up 8. That's it. Now, can we encourage people to do that? If people are afraid to fail, then they will need to have the confidence there will be no judgment. Should we do that? Absolutely, yes. It's our role as teachers to do that. But it's more important, it's our role as parents to do that even earlier. Because the last time that people failed is when they were 1 year old and they tried to walk for the first time. And then maybe later when they try to ride a bicycle.
It's very interesting to hear that the Japanese, I guess, are experts in Mishle. They were quoting Proverbs when they were talking about the fall 7 times and then get right back up after that. But you also gave me an appreciation of one of the other things I was going to ask you about later. The quote that I had from Steve Wozniak from the foreword about applying it to personal life. You had mentioned later on that I was going to put you on examples. You already provided it. Fail and recover. This is one of the most important lessons to incorporate into your parenthood. And so what you're saying is early on, we can foster it in our children, and hopefully we had it at least a little bit fostered for us in the same way that your father was able to do that.
I think to add to that, and maybe I want you to comment this, and then in about a minute we can go to the students, so get ready. I wonder if failure works only if you do it right. Meaning, the research from Eric Anderson about deliberate practice. People that fail, you had an environment, you were blessed, your father encouraged failure. I think if you fail with the intention of learning, and you know that post-failure something will come out of it, you'll be more likely to be willing to fail. But if failure is seen as a proof of your lack, then that's scarier.
So 2 factors to it, right? And the first one is statistics, right? Second-time entrepreneurs have way higher likelihood of being successful, regardless what happened on the first journey. So the experience that we gain is becoming dramatic. I think that I heard a really nice story about that, about a very successful CEO that was shy away from the media and never got interviewed. And one day he agreed to do 5 minutes interview. And the reporter asked him, so how you become such a successful CEO? And he said 2 words, right decisions. Okay, but how do you know how to make right decisions? So 1 word, experience. Okay, but how do you gain experience? 2 words, wrong decisions. And so at the end of the day, and this is really important, right? Because just imagine that you are in an organization that does not encourage failures, right? So what happened is if you try something and it doesn't work, then you might get punished, you might get fired, and so forth, and everyone else seeing that, right? So the result is that someone else is not going to try something new because they're afraid to fail. And if it's the other way around, if what we are doing is rather than to figure out, rather than to fire someone, is to basically say, okay, what have we learned from that experience, and how can we make the next experience to become more successful, then all of a sudden there is an encouragement to try new things. Now, most of the corporates don't innovate anymore because of that. Because the DNA have changed into fear of failure rather than let's try new things.
Okay, to the students, we'll go around and just pick up the mic and get the questions going.
Thank you so much for coming. So you spoke a lot about failing and running a startup theoretically, about what to do if a problem arises or there's some issue you have to work through. I'm curious more about practicality. Someone can have an amazing idea, but where does someone go from there when they're interested in working with a startup? You spoke about speaking to investors, speaking to different people and getting feedback, but I'm sure it's more involved than just I have an idea and now I have an office space where I'm working with other people.
So for a second, I will give the importance of the idea about 2% of the journey. And the rest of the 98% is about the execution, not giving up, trying and failing, and eventually figuring out the way. And so you think that you have a great idea and this is it, and I would say, no, I don't care about great idea. You will actually get there if you work in a process that will eventually leads you into the right concept, into the right product, for example. And I would like to put things into perspective, right? So figuring out product market fit is about creating value to your customers, right? And if you don't figure out product market fit, you will die. Now, in fact, you never heard of a company that did not figure out product market fit. They simply died. That's it. But if you think of companies that did, and for us, let's use our smartphones and all the applications that we are using every day, from Waze to searching Google to using Uber to using Netflix to whatever it is, and you ask yourself, what is the difference between any of those that you're using today and the first time that you have used that? And the answer is that there is no difference. We are searching Google today the same way that we searched Google for the first time in our life. We're using Waze today the same way, or WhatsApp, or Uber, or whatever it is, the same way. So once a company figure out their product market fit, which is the value that they bring to their customers, they don't change that anymore. But it took them years from the time that they started until they figured that out. And even if you think of very successful companies, even Microsoft, it was 5 years. It was 3.5 years for Waze from the day that we started the company until we actually were able to bring value to customers. It was 10 years for Netflix. So it's a long journey to figure out product market fit. And during this period of time, you have no traction because it doesn't work. So even if it does work technological, then your users don't come. And if they do come, they don't use. And if they do come and they do use, then churn. And this is the process why the idea doesn't matter anymore. What is important is that you keep on trying different things.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. I love the title, I think it's very catchy. But thinking more into it, I feel like if you fall in love so much with the problem, doesn't it inhibit you from finding a solution? Since you're so on the problem, it can just stop you from finding a solution.
So I would say it's actually the other way around, right? So because what happens is that when you fall in love with the problem serves two purposes. The first one is it's the North Star of your journey. And when you have a North Star, you're going to make less deviations from the journey. And every day you ask yourself, if I'm making a progress in helping drivers to avoid traffic jams, right? And not whether or not my technological work or do I have an advantage or whatever. It's not about technology. It's about solving the problem, about creating value. And if all of a sudden you need to switch the technology or the solution, then you will switch the technology or the solution because what you're trying to do is create value, and you create value through solving a problem. The other part of it is that your story is going to be way more compelling. If we will be here in 2007 and I will tell you I'm going to build an AI crowdsourced navigation system, then everyone is going to look at me and say, yeah, really interesting. But no one cares. If I will tell you I'm going to help you to avoid traffic jams, then you do care. And so the story is way more compelling when it's actually associated with the problem. And the reality is that obviously you're not working on the problem, you're working on the solution, but you are thinking of the problem every day.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much for the first episode. For those who want to ask any questions, please feel free to send us questions at foundersdilemmaspodcast@gmail.com. As always, it's an honor to have Uri Levine here with us, and stay tuned for the next episode where we ask him plenty more questions following up on episode 1.